Book 6. Was it any good? Story! I'll be honest, I don't really keep up with the story as much nowadays because ever since Book 5 and Book 4 and Book 3 and Book 2 but I was looking through it, and from what I've seen of it, it's pretty much just the Fae story. However, while I can't comment on the entire plot, I can comment about the ending, which I do really enjoy, actually. I thought, for what it was worth, it made Embla into a more likable character. Even though Embla herself is a villain, I can sympathize more with her. And overall, I did quite enjoy it. And I don't know if I'm alone in this, but if you have a decent story going for you and the payoff is really bad, versus if you have a bad story and the ending is surprisingly good, the former is a lot worse. And again, I didn't keep up as much as I did with all the other books, but from what I did read of it, because I did read through a good majority of it, I may have skimmed a couple of things here or there, but that aside, from what I've read, I found this to be a lot more enjoyable than maybe some of the other books. It's okay. I think the payoff was pretty good. I think everything leading up to the payoff was whatever, but the ending, I think, makes up for the entire thing. So, I say it gets a pass. New heroes! To be honest, I think this was one of the more interesting books in terms of new heroes, mainly because now we have a new gimmick in the form of the Ascendeds and all that stuff. And for the entirety of Book 6, we had 9 of them. How many of them were good? Maybe like 3. Maybe like 3. That's all I can really. Ash's Banner! Started out with Awakening. I thought this was a pretty decent lineup for what it was worth. I don't think it was the most sought after lineup, but I think in terms of overall representation from Awakening, I thought it was pretty good. Flavia, Basilio were really cool picks. Priam was pretty decent. Yenfei was a really solid Grand Hero Battle edition. We'll get the Grand Hero Battles later. Sacred Stones, we had 3 daggers and a bow, and none of them had lethality. But we did have Ascended Joshua, who is really cool, and so the only male Ascended that we have in the game. Renak, who's pretty decent. Colm, who's a really cool demote, and Nami, who is also pretty decent. I'm not really talking about in terms of like overall combat prowess or like viability. I'm just talking about more in terms of just additions. And as far as the lineup goes, I thought it was pretty decent. With Reeve as a backup, not too shabby whatsoever. It's rare that we get a mostly male-centric banner. And you know what? Cool. Ascended Idun banner with Hugh, Kath, and Nime. And wow, they did Nime super dirty. They didn't have to necessarily give her a PRF, but the fact that they gave her a inheritable colorless tome, and the fact that there aren't any other inheritable colorless tomes currently, dick move. But otherwise, Ascended Idune's pretty cool, Hugh is cool, Kath is cool. Ascended Marita's banner. We finally got Galzus, the Movement Star King, August, Karen, Ascended Marita. Pretty cool stuff overall. Galzus was a pretty cool addition. Of course, he got no PRF, but that's whatever. Ascended Marita came with Vital Astra, so that's pretty cool. August is a pretty cool gimmicky staff. Karen's another generic Lance Flyer. Still, decent lineup. Kind of wish Fergus was there with Karen, but otherwise, not bad whatsoever. Genealogy! We had Skahawk, who was pretty cool. Tine, who was pretty cool. Ishtar, who was pretty debated on whether or not she made for a decent Ascended, but neither here nor there. And Arthur, again, pretty cool lineup overall. We finally got Skahawk, and he aged pretty well thanks to all the inheritable swords that we got. Pretty cool. Fallen Heroes, Dragons, mostly, and Gustav, and Miorum, and the GHB. Whoop-de-doo. Basically more alts. Not a bad selection, to be honest. I fully expected Fallen Rhea because we did get Fallen Edelgard and Dimitri last year. Although beyond that, Fallen Lilith is really cool because she has her own no follow-up gimmick with the 2-space teleportation stuff. Gustav, who's basically just Eliwood with slaying. And Ninian, who has her own gimmicky dance stuff. Not a bad lineup. I would say it was a bit stronger than last year's, especially the GHB, who didn't get completely shafted. And overall, it introduced a pretty good amount of stuff, so can't complain. Blazing Blade! We had Ascended Florina, who I don't think anyone really liked. I don't care one way or the other personally, I think it's fine. But we did get Sane and Kent, who I think were long overdue, and I'm glad they're in, finally. And Letizia also taking up a spot, which totally fair, totally fine. She usually did that, and it didn't really come at the cost of anyone in particular because we did end up getting Guy as the instant demote, which was nice, and a Grand Hero Battle in the form of Limstella, who is really awesome. I think they are one of the coolest GHBs that we got this year. But again, I'll go into GHBs later on. Overall, not a bad Blazing Blade banner. Shadows of Valentia, it sucked. Brave Heroes, the lineup, yeah, it's something. You had Ascended Celica, who I don't think anyone thinks was a good, quote-unquote, Ascended candidate. I think everybody was under the interpretation that an Ascended would basically be for non-lords, although, in fairness, they never really said one way or the other. Still, I think everyone felt, including myself, that making somebody who already had a legendary alt into an Ascended when you also had other candidates really wasn't a great move. Even if you needed a seller for the banner, although you have Valentian Est, it just felt weird, and I don't think most people took too kindly with it. She's a really fun unit at the very least, so I could give her that. Valentian Est, you know, Est best, yada yada yada. Ymir's pretty cool. Demote Kamui, pretty cool stuff. We had Instant Demote Atlas, who actually still scores pretty well because they gave him trainee BST. And Grand Hero Battle Brigand Boss, who I think is hilarious. I didn't think he'd actually ever get in, but you know what? For people who actually wanted him, go nuts. Brave Heroes. This is what we expected. They're all really cool. They all have their own gimmicks. They all do certain things. Seliph is a pain in the ass to deal with, which, great, he finally got the justice he deserves. Tiki, Crom, Byleth, pretty cool stuff. Can't really complain. New fodder, all sorts of stuff, yada yada yada. Approved. 3 Hopes. Honestly, a really, really sick lineup, in my opinion. We got both male and female Shiz, who are kick-ass, really love them. Monica, who's a bit more forgettable, but she was still a cool addition, especially with her PRF tome. Arcane Liv, who basically started out the Arcane trend, which was pretty nice. Ascended Hilda, who I guess they needed another unit to sell the banner, but I don't know. Ascended Hilda's whatever, I guess. Although not really Celica bad, but still. And then we had Holus's Grand Hero Battle, who was also pretty cool. Awakening! Again, I didn't think anyone was expecting Awakening at all, let alone another Gen 1 banner. Another cool Arcane unit is whatever. Gregor and Fila are really awesome. Rickon's finally in. Cervantes, funny dude. Kind of like him. He's a freebie armor with high BST. Can't really complain there, especially if you want it for arena purposes. And Descended Air, who's also really nice. Overall, I think it was fine. Nothing too grand overall, but for what it was worth, it's Awakening. I don't think they really had much to work with, mainly because they burnt through so many of them in 2017 and 2018, but oh well. And finally, we had the Arcanea banner, which could have been better. I think it could have been better. Harden, Nina were probably the highlights of the banner outside of Ganglot, who had the Arcane Axe. Ascended Tiki was definitely a mixed bag. I know a lot of people like Tiki, and I'm not going to be that guy that says you can't like them. If you like them, awesome, more power to you. I do think it's a bit of a slap in the face to just make her better Brave Tiki, especially since she just got all of her gimmicks and a better color, but that aside, I like the art, she's fun, she has good fodder, can't really complain. In the final ranking when it comes to the Book 6 normal pool banners, I'm willing to say overall, it was pretty solid. I don't think I really have too many complaints, maybe outside of Double Awakening. I don't know why we necessarily got 2 Awakening, but I guess it's whatever at this point. Maybe it was for the anniversary, but that aside, a couple of Ascended picks that were pretty meh in my opinion, but the overall additions to the game in terms of the normal pool were pretty solid in my opinion. I don't think I could really complain too much, although I'm sure there's other units that people would have liked to see, and hopefully we'll see them in Book 7. Seasonals. You know, we get 1 extra seasonal each year compared to normal pool banners. I just learned that. Winter. It's alt. We got Manuela. This was pretty much the start of the freebie sword stuff that basically snowballed, no pun intended. And honestly, I'm all for it. Manuela's really cool. She was a great demote. She aged remarkably well. We had Lysithea, who's pretty good at what she does. Mirabilis, Arthur. Not a bad lineup for what it was worth. New Year's. Of course, it's going to be OCs. You had Reagan, who's super cute. You had Fafnir, who's super cool. You had a couple of the other beasts who were pretty cool. And you had a freebie Kaiser, who is also really awesome. But also in the same month, we got the Hatari theme with Azura and Carla and Zane and stuff. And, okay, it was fine. Kind of forgettable. I don't think it was, like, bad by any means, but it wasn't exactly the most memorable, but oh well. We did get Free Dean, who I think was the highlight. Valentine's, Dual Crom. You could go fuck yourself. Spring, the downfall of everything, because Spring Maria decided to bring in true damage reduction. Woo! Yay, true damage reduction. Oh, I guess Delphia and Sonia and Henry are there too. Anyway, that's pretty cool. Children banner, I guess that's what you're supposed to call them. I don't know what you're supposed to call them. But we had Path of Radiance this time, and we finally got Boyd. He's the only one that matters. But, I mean, I guess we also got Mia and Eliana and Ike and Soren, who are, you know, they're okay. I know they're not, like, the most highly demanded units ever, but we all can't beat Boyd. Roy's Harem. It was fine. I don't really have anything to say about it. I think it was also kind of forgettable, but we did have Groom Roy and Elliewood duo, which I thought was pretty cute. We had Sophia, Lilina, Cecilia, which were pretty nice, and we got a free Binding Blade Dancer in the Tempest Trial, so now limited hero battles aren't as painful, which is pretty nice. Summer 1! Wow, they really went all out for this. And if you don't think they have Three Houses bias, they do. So, I love all the units on here. Summer Dimitri, Claude, Micaiah, Edelgard, and free Summer Alintia. I love all of them personally. I think Summer Dimitri and Claude are probably my favorite ones, followed by Edelgard and Micaiah. But I may like Alintia the most, mainly because she made bows much more usable, especially the faster ones. And Whitecap is still a really fantastic inheritable, so for what it's worth, I think Alintia was the real star of the banner. Summer 2, I think it was fine. I liked Summer 1 a bit more. I liked the lineup a lot more, but also Lords and Micaiah and Alintia. But I liked Summer Thor, she was pretty cool. Erica, Leon, who also came with a really rockin' inheritable sword. You'll love to see that. Coral Saber was really, really nice. And then you had Summer Seth, who finally got something of his own, which was nice. And overall, I think for what it was worth, these were probably the best summer banners that we got in all of Fae. Not even in terms of power level, I think overall they were just the most fun. Mainly because I don't think any of them really got screwed in terms of usage, even though I just said it wasn't a power level sort of thing. I think a lot of them were just fun, and if you were looking for good demotes and building stuff, you had Claude and Summer Leon, who are fantastic, honestly. Especially Coral Saber, but now we have Arcane. But that aside, Thief Banner. Honestly, I thought it was a really cool theme. I just think the lineup kind of sucked. You did have Soth, Layla, which were pretty cool. I'm surprised Kath was there. Although I'm not against Kath, I just figured they wouldn't give her an alt this soon. But you know what? It wasn't bad. Although Nina with Kagero was just a weird combination. I swear, I don't hate either of them. I just think the combination's just weird. I don't think they could ever really interact with each other. And even if they do, correct me in the comments, I don't know why they necessarily paired them together. I figured if they were going to do a Nina duo, they would probably pick one of the other kids, maybe like Soleil or Ophelia. But oh well, that's what happens. And I want to see this theme return. I just don't know if they're ever going to, because this was right before the Brave banner, so you know it didn't do well. Flame Tribe. You had Muspel, Lin, Rinka, Tana. Not bad, not great. It was whatever. We did have another cool inheritable sword in Flame Gunbai, which pretty cool. It's a nice sword, but you also have Arcane, which does a lot of other things. Still, Flame Gunbai, not bad. Muspel, really strong. Flame Tana, really strong. Lin, godlike reflexes. We all like godlike reflexes, don't we? Halloween, my personal favorite, because Halloween Duma. I don't want to hear anything else about it. You don't like it? Too bad. Halloween Duma. And ninjas, who I'm surprised they kept, mainly because they skipped out on pirates, but ninjas are probably more popular, and I don't blame them. Ninjas are cool. And all these ninjas are really cool, because Shirsh finally got an alt, so that's an automatic win. We got inheritable dual-phase brave weapons, and while the might of each weapon isn't exactly the highest, they're really, really strong weapons. Ninja Camilla is also really, really strong, and Ninja Legyard also really strong. Overall, I really love this banner. I do have a bit of a soft spot for ninjas and brave. I do like the combination. But overall, I did think the lineup was pretty good. I'm glad Shirsh finally got an alt, Har got an alt, Heath got an alt, Camilla got another alt, but I mean, it's been like 3 years, so whatever. Leguiarn got an alt. Honestly, I like it. And overall, I think the seasonals this time around were maybe a bit weaker than last year's. I really did like the summer banners the most, I think, and possibly the Halloween banner and Ninja banner. But otherwise, I think everything was pretty par for the course. Not to say that any of these units were bad necessarily, but personally, I didn't find them nearly as desirable, mainly because I feel like they're just scratching the bottom of the barrel at this point, especially if they have to bring out all the popular units again, but I mean, that's popular units, so for what it's worth, not a bad Book 6 seasonal lineup, not the greatest, not the worst. I think the normal pool banners were a lot better, personally. Legendaries and Mythics. This one's fine, screw you, cool, cool, awesome, cool, cool, awesome, cool, cool, pretty cool. Grand Hero Battles. Honestly, I was surprised that a lot of them were treated pretty well. I'm not surprised about the Three Houses ones because, well, they usually get treated pretty well. but Yenfei with a distant counter damage reduction PRF, and while you can argue his quality nowadays, or even back then when he first released, it's still a lot better treatment than a lot of other units get that are free. So kudos to that. Reeve surprisingly ended up getting something really strong, and I don't know why specifically Reeve, but can't complain. Gonzalez, generic, but really cool addition. Salem, generic, also really cool addition. Hilda, who got a PRF, which is okay. I think the funny part was more so about how people were simping for her, and then they realized what the hell she did, and then they're like, oh. And you know what? That was probably the best part. Mayorm, who was pretty cool, but they already get a PRF by default because Beast. Still, the gimmick was cool, as you don't have to necessarily lock them to a Beast-oriented team. Limstella, they were treated pretty well. I like them a lot. And now with Quick Riposte 4 well, not necessarily normal pool, but in the game, I think they're going to be really strong now. Brigand Boss, meme, but he's a funny meme. Gerald, really, really strong freebie. I'm surprised he was free, and he has a lot of utility in his hybrid nature. Host, while he isn't exactly the strongest in terms of his PRF, he's still a really solid unit in terms of stat line, and you could use all sorts of inheritable swords that make him really, really strong, especially the Wyvern Katana. Cervantes, generic Lance Demo with armor BST, so good for arena scoring. Can't really complain, he's a funny unit, big mustache, yada yada yada. And Mathis, who's Mathis, and I have no personal attachment to him, but I heard he's like the worst performing unit in the entire series. So you know what, that's funny, and I'm glad he's in the game. Not a bad lineup. I'm hopeful that we'll at least maintain the same level of quality for the next book, because 7 of these 12 units have PRFs, and while I don't expect everyone to have a PRF, I do hope that a good amount of them will be treated pretty well. Tempest Trials and all that stuff. We had 13 freebies in the form of Ignatz, Kaiser, Dean, Lissa, Luthier, Boyd, Larm, Alencia, Seth, Rickard, Nils, Mordecai, and Har. A good amount of them introduced pretty decent stuff. We had the Unity Bow from Ignatz. We had Staff of Tribute from Lissa, which isn't bad whatsoever. You had the Whitecap Bow, which I think was probably one of the better additions we got. Seahorse Axe from Seth. Floored Cane from Rickard. Surprise Breath from Nils. Mordecai unfortunately didn't have an inheritable weapon, but he's still pretty good on his own. And Har, who has his inheritable dual phase brave sword, which is really, really strong. From what I'm seeing though, they really picked up post-spring. Even units like Larm, who isn't exactly like a strong unit, it's still a freebie Binding Blade Dancer, which is really nice. And in terms of the Sacred Seals, we did have a lot of standout ones, including Fury, No Follow-Up, Distant Counter for Dragons, Darting Breath, Warding Breath, Bonus Doubler, Catch. There was a lot of good stuff this year. And for what it's worth, I think there's a lot of decent freebie picks in terms of just fan favorites. I know Ignatz, while not necessarily the most popular Three Houses unit, was still sought after for because he was still one of the Three Houses students. Kaiser, who's a really cool character. I like Kaiser. I think they're pretty cool. Dean, one of my personal favorites from Shadows of Valentia. Lissa, also another fan favorite. Luthier, I don't know how many people like Luthier per se, but I fully welcome him. Pretty cool. Boyd, also a really great addition. I love Boyd. I'm glad he at least got something. Lauren, who's pretty good. Alencia, who saved pretty much every fast bow in the game. Seth, who made all axes pretty viable. Rickard, who had his Floored Cane. And while he wasn't the most demanded unit, he still brought his own to the table, which, you know what? Nice. He was also with the Distant Counter Seal, so you know what? I think that's a win. Nils, who also brought his own stuff, which was pretty nice. And Mordecai, I like Mordecai. I don't think there's anybody who doesn't like Mordecai. He's cool. And of course, Har, who's also a pretty big fan favorite. You'll love to see it. I think the lineup overall is really nice. Other miscellaneous additions. Summoner Duels. I know it's not the most beloved mode, but I think in terms of modes where they actually tried something, I think this is one of the best attempts they did in a while. Definitely has its own fair share of issues, but for what it's worth, I think Summoner Duels was a fantastic addition. Even if you don't necessarily like Summoner Duels, I think it's worth appreciating the effort, mainly because we usually ended up with stuff like Frontline Phalanx, which, you know, yay. The Hall of Forms update. Now it's much easier to get skills that you want, and while it's not necessarily guaranteed, it makes the odds so much better, so that's great, especially if you bought Former Souls. Seasonal 4-star special rates. I think they're fine. I don't think you're really going to necessarily see them all too often, mainly because I think they're only applicable to certain banners, but now the chances of getting a specific unit from that banner has increased to 4%, which is really nice, and you could just get any random stuff one day, which, you know what, pretty cool. Hex Trap. I don't think it really did anything until Chaos Season, which I do like. However, that also has its own fair share of issues. You know, since they bungled it up immediately at the start, but I think for what it's worth, using any unit anywhere at any time is pretty fun. And I think it just adds something to Aether Raids overall, so you know what? Not too bad. Binding Worlds. It's a game mode that grants a bunch of flowers, and I think that was definitely very, very good in terms of the game edition. I don't like how they time gate it, but it's pretty much just another watered down Hall of Forms. You basically step on a portal, you get a new unit with a higher level, and rinse and repeat. And it's okay. Hall of Form revivals. I think this was probably one of the better additions that we got this book. Mainly because if you wanted to get all these older units who got maybe decent refines, or you want to build up these units that you don't really have the skill accessibility for, now you have the option to, which is pretty cool. Of course, it's still through polls, but you know what? That's better than nothing. Arcanes. Arguably the best addition to Book 6. As now, any old unit that fell off like immediately, or just haven't aged well, and while this will still make your unit generic, it's still a lot better than what they probably could have worked with any inheritable. So you know what? Cool stuff. SDR and SDS. Honestly, I think they're fine. I don't think SDR is as good as SDS, mainly because there's more planning when it comes to Summoner Duels S. SDR is just completely random, but you know what? It can still be fun in its own right. Still, you know what? Not bad alternative modes. The only thing I don't like is that it disables Arena Assault when it's active. And while Arena Assault isn't exactly like the best game mode ever, I think taking away something so that you can do something else, especially if you aren't fond of Summoner Duels, is a bit of a low blow. There's no reason why you just can't get rewards from both. Flower costs are really, really expensive, and Binding Worlds doesn't come often enough for it to even matter. So if you wanted to build a Crom, well, good luck saving, because it's going to take you forever. Final verdict. Yeah, you know what? It was pretty good. Can we get a male OC for Book 7, please?